Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Man, welcome back for another Cardfight Vanguard episode review. We got off the bat, this episode was probably my favorite fight in the last 3 seasons. Not that we haven't had a bunch of great fights, but this fight was freaking insane. If you guys enjoy my episode reviews and this kind of content, drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Let's jump in. Before we even start on the episode, the thing I have to point out about this fight that really just made me happy, besides the fact that it was a really good long 9-turn fight, these decks, because we're still in set 5 meta here in the States, this fight, these card choices were almost perfect as far as a competitive standpoint goes. So as a competitive player, I was like so locked into this fight. There was a couple card choices that would be a little bit different and could have really made the difference if they were using, cards that are available IRL. But I was so impressed with the detail and the ferocity of this fight. And man, this could have been a season finale with how good this fight was. But enough from me. Let's talk about what happened in the episode. So starting off with the episode, it starts off with Akina. Akina's before his match, trying, kind of mentally preparing, and Kagetsu approaches him and is trying to help him relax, offers to buy him a drink and whatnot. Akina says not to worry because even though he's nervous, he's more excited than nervous. And he says he has something new he wants to try. That caught my attention. And we'll talk about what that is as we get into the fight. But Akina goes to walk off and he turns to Kagetsu. Kagetsu's just like, I'll be watching. He thanks him. And boom, we go get ready for the fight. Now, after the episode intro, we see Kuon before the fight looking up, it's about to go down, and we get a bunch of flashbacks of what happened after the incident with Sybil. Basically, everybody went back to their normal lives. Kuon tried to apologize to Akina. Akina being Akina, he's like, don't even worry about it. But Kuon just felt so horrible about it. Suo shows up and immediately challenges Kuon to a fight. And Suo and Akina basically forgive him and, kind of invite him into their friend group, and they all really become friends. They start spending more time together. They kind of hype him up into continuing his research to go to Planet Cray, and how they're like, we can never do that. You're amazing for even trying. They end up playing with a lot of card fights with him, and they become legitimate friends. And Suo tells him good luck, and this means a lot to Kuon because remember, going to Planet Cray was their dream, and he's keeping it alive because Suo lost his memories. So last thing we see right before the match, we see Suo actually show up and tell Kuon good luck as he goes into the match. And man, we get a hard stand down from Akina and Kuon, and you could just feel it starts off as tension, but it just becomes pure competitiveness, and I love it because Kuon is actually going through some stuff mentally that we'll explain throughout the fight, and by the end of it, like, this makes you want to go jump and go and compete in a tournament right the fuck now. But all right, start off with the fight. We have our stars, of course: Akina, Wings of Aspiration Soul; Kuon, Stagnant for Dragon. Now, for anybody that's never seen my episode reviews, I always announce it. They do not emphasize their draw for turns or their energy charge 3. Just assume that they happen because they always end up having a few cards in hand, and they end up using energy blasts without ever actually showing how much energy they have. There are a few effects in here that they have to have used for things to play out the way they do, but they don't announce it. I'll make a point of which ones I caught, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. But enough from me. Let's jump into the game. Turn 1, Akina rides Patrol of Gus Van Testa. Turn ends. Fast turn, all you do is ride grade 1. Turn 2, Kuon rides Scorpiercer Dragon. Kuon calls Knight of Silent Illusion Clarence. Kuon attacks with Scorpiercer Dragon. Akina doesn't guard. Most cases in the early game, they don't guard the Vanguard. Kuon doesn't get a trigger. Akina takes 1 damage. Kuon attacks with Clarence. This one Akina guards. Turns over. Damage is now 1-0 with Kuon in the lead. Now, Kuon and Akina have a little bit of a out of game back and forth in between every round, and Kuon and Akina basically acknowledge that they've been wanting to fight each other seriously for a while, and they've never actually had the opportunity. This is their first time to really push each other. But turn 3 goes, Akina rides Knight of Great Advance Ascensior and uses Ventesta's skill. Auto, when this unit is rode upon by Knight of Great Advance Ascensior, call this card to rearguard and soul charge 1. Akina then calls Knight of Piercing Cadwalla. Now this is interesting because he has never used Cadwalla before, and this is actually one of the cards that I mentioned where this is actually like a competitively viable card. There's a lot of Raziel decks that play this card because of what it does, but he also calls an aerial stage behind his Vanguard. Akina attacks with Cadwalla, Kuan guards, and then Akina activates Cadwalla's skill, and this is why this card is so good. Auto rearguard, at the end of the battle, this unit attacked a Vanguard. If you have 4 or more units, Soul Blast 1, retire this unit, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 2 or greater card from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. If you do not reveal a card, draw a card. But off the top 3, Akina adds a copy of Raziel Vita. Akina then attacks with this Ascensior. Kuan doesn't guard. Akina doesn't get a trigger. Kuan takes 1 damage. Akina attacks with Vantesta. This one Kuan guards. Turns over. Now the damage is even 1-1. Turn 4, Kuan Ryan's Mana Scythe Dragon. For anybody that doesn't know, Scort Piercer Dragon has a skill where if you're going to ride into Manta Scythe Dragon, you don't have to discard. They never make a point of mentioning it because he just kind of does it. Now we get to see one of the new cards for set 7 for Levydross. Kuan calls Acquired Pantherad and Full Knowledge Foxel. I like Pantherad, some people don't. Kuan attacks with Mana Scythe Dragon. Akina doesn't guard. Kuan doesn't get a trigger, and Akina takes 1 damage. Kuan then attacks with Pantherad. Akina doesn't guard and takes 1 damage. This was also really interesting. A lot of times in all of these games, you'll see the same kind of moves. The first couple turns, they won't guard the Vanguard, but they'll always guard the rear guards. Akina has the cards in hand, but he chooses not to guard and goes to 3 damage. This, again, is one of those competitive moves that makes sense when you play the real card game, and I thought this was cool that they did this. But after this battle, Kuan uses Pantherad's skill. Auto rearguard. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked. Retire this unit, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 3 or greater card with Levydross in its card name. From among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. Kuan adds a copy of Faded One of Infinity, Levydross off the top 7, the turn is over. The damage is now 3-1 with Kuan in the lead. And now we got to see even more of these competitive moves, and I was just like, I'm telling you, I was locked into this episode. This episode was so good. This is like my favorite fight of the Divides era. Turn 5, Akina rides Faded One of Miracles, Raziel. Akina uses the Ascensior skill. Auto, when this unit is rode upon by a grade 3 or greater unit with Raziel in its card name, choose up to 1 grade 2 list card from your drop, call it to rearguard. Akina calls Knight of Gentle Beauty Nobia from the drop with this skill. Nobia is not a card that's used too much in Raziel decks, but considering that he's using specifically just Raziel support, it makes sense. But he uses Nubia's skill. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Raziel on its card name, counterblast 1, the top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 3 list card from among them, call it to rearguard, and put the rest at the bottom of your deck. We never talk about the second half of this skill because it never matters, but it actually ends up mattering in this game. If it is your battle phase, reveal the card, and put it into your hand instead of calling it. Off of this skill, Akina calls Knight of Bowstreaks Noberis from the top 3. Then Akina attacks with Noberis, Kuan guards. He had called Noberis into the same column as Vantesta and then swapped them. They just don't emphasize that. Now, here's one of the skills I was talking about that he has to have used, but they don't actually declare it. But basically, he uses Noberis' skill here. So for anybody that doesn't know what Noberis does, auto rigger, at the end of the battle, this unit attacked. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard raising on its card name, Energy Blast 3, put this unit into your soul, draw a card, and then you get to look at the top card of your deck and put it at the top or bottom of your deck. The reason I say that he uses it is because when he attacks with Raziel and he goes to use Raziel's skill, it actually shows the empty rearguard circle. So he attacks with Raziel and uses Raziel's skill. Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, counterblast 1, choose up to 2 cards from your drop with different grades and a total grade less than or equal to the number of cards in your damage zone and call them to rearguard. Like I said, it shows the empty rearguard circle where the Noberis was supposed to be, but it's empty because he used Noberis' skill. Now, this goes back to why he took that extra damage last turn. By being at 3 damage, he can now call a grade 3 and a grade 0, a grade 1 and a grade 2. It basically was to give himself more options, which, because he could have stayed at 2 damage and he would have been able to call a grade 2 and a grade 0 or a grade 1 and a grade 0. But by taking the extra damage, he now gets to call a grade 2 and a grade 1. So, seriously, competitive style of move that they did there, managing your damage like that. But with this skill, Akina calls Cadwalla back, and then he calls a new card from set 5, Knight of Severe Spear Severus. I'm pretty sure that's how you're supposed to say it. But he uses Set versus skill. Auto, when this unit is placed on rear guard by the ability of your grade 3 Gator Vanguard with Razor Lance card name, Soul Blast 1, and all of your front row units get 5k until the end of turn. That skill is so damn good, especially for going first, because Raziel is another deck that gains majority of its power when your opponent's at grade 3, so going second. So this giving you some power going first is really, really nice. Kuon doesn't guard the Vanguard attack, and Akina gets a heal trigger on his twin drive. He gives the 10k power to Nobia and heals 1 damage. Kuon takes a damage. Akina attacks with Cadwalla, Kuon guards. Akina uses Cadwalla's skill again. Off the top 3, he adds a copy of Noberis. Akina then attacks with Nobia, Kuon doesn't guard and takes 1 damage. And then at the end of the battle, Akina uses Silverus' second skill. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, my bad. But as a second skill, at the end of the battle, this unit boosted if this unit was placed on rear guard by the ability of your grade 3 Gator Vanguard Razor Lance card name. Bind this unit, draw a card. So he just drew so many cards that turn. But turns over, the damage is now 2-3 with Akina in the lead. We get a peek into what's been going on with Kuon mentally, and basically every time Akina does something, it makes him feel some type of way. When he beat Sybil, when he saved Suo, he says he doesn't know if it's a feeling of inferiority, of envy, but he doesn't really understand the feelings that he's feeling toward Akina and all the great things Akina's doing. So he's hoping by overcoming Akina, he'll figure it out. So that's what his whole motivation is right now. And then they did something I didn't expect. They recycled this animation from last season, but this was my favorite ride animation from last season, as my boy Kuon rides Destined King of Infinity, Levidros Imperio. Holy shit. When I saw this, my jaw dropped, because this is again another competitive move. Instead of going into Levidros turn 3 and Imperio turn 4, he put Imperio in his ride deck, which is in most cases the better way to play Imperio. So seeing the whole ride animation, your boy got hyped. But going into Kuon's turn, Kuon starts off with Imperio skill. So everybody doesn't know Imperio skill, act Vanguard once per turn, counterblast 1, or put a card from your hand into the soul. Choose 2 of any player's rearguard circles and put an Infinity Eyes marker on each of them. If you put a grade 3 or greater card with Levidros in its card name for the cost of this skill, choose 3 rearguards instead of 2. So he had put a copy of Destined 1 of Infinity Levidros, so he gets to put 3 markers down. So for anyone that doesn't remember how the markers work, the markers tie to a skill that's on Levidros, which is auto Vanguard. When any player's unit on a rearguard with your Infinity Eyes marker attacks or boosts, you may have that unit gain 10,000 power or lose 10,000 power until the end of that battle. If your opponent's unit lost 10,000 power, remove your Infinity Eyes marker from that rearguard circle and draw a card. But he puts 1 Infinity Eyes marker on Akina's front row and 2 on his side. Then Kuon uses Imperio's Divine skill. The reason he was able to use a Divine skill here is because of the other skill of Levidros Imperio. Continuous Vanguard, this unit is also regarded as Destined 1 of Infinity Levidros. During your turn, this unit gets 5,000 power for each Destined 1 of Infinity Levidros in your soul and all of their Divine skills. So he put a copy of Destined 1 of Infinity Levidros into the soul with his first skill, giving him access to a Divine skill now. But the Divine skill is act Vanguard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, Soul Blast 1, choose 1 of your and your opponent's rearguard circles each and put an Infinity Eyes marker on them, and this unit gets 10,000 power and +1 critical until end of turn. So he puts another marker on his opponent's front row and another one on his board. So now his board has 3 markers. Kuon calls Murky Barbulator. Now this is one of those cards that's less competitive. If this had been Charmnet, I would have lost my mind. But he calls Murky Barbulate and Sulky Claws Huntsman Huli, and then uses Huli's skill, which is auto when this unit is placed on rearguard. If your Infinity Eyes marker is in the same column as this unit, counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop, call it to rearguard. If you have 3 or more Infinity Eyes markers, this unit gains 10,000 power until end of turn. So he calls Pantherad back with Huli's skill and gives Huli 10,000 power. Kuon uses Pantherad's other skill. Pantherad does have another skill. This is why I like this card. So in the early game, it gets you copies of Levidros. In the mid to late game, it can do this. When this unit is placed on a rearguard circle with your Infinity Eyes marker, this unit gains 5,000 power until end of turn. If your Infinity Eyes marker is on your other rearguard circle in the same column as this unit, choose 1 of your other rearguards and it gets 5,000 power until the end of turn. So using this skill, Kuon gives 5k power to Pantherad and Barbalator. So now he's got, you know, even more beefiness. Kuon attacks with Levidra's Imperial first and uses Foxel's skill. Continuous during the battle, this unit boosts. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Levidra's in its card name, this unit gets 5k power. And its second skill, auto rearguard when this unit boosts. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Levidra's in its card name, if your opponent's rearguard has your Infinity Eyes marker on it, this unit gets 2000 power until end of that battle. And counterblast 1 and choose one of your back row rearguards until the end of turn. That unit can attack from the back row and gains 10k. So he gives 10k to Barbalator and the skill to attack from the back row. So now he has a 4 attack turn. Akina guards this attack. Now, I normally don't mention the cards they guard with, but with Akina, this matters because our boy was cooking. Akina guards this attack with triggers. He drops 3 cards, 2 of which are criticals and a heal. 2 criticals. Kuon gets a critical off his twin drive, gives both effects to Huli. Kuon attacks with Pantherad. Akina doesn't guard, takes 1 damage. So this is another one of those times where he uses the skill and it doesn't show, but he uses Pantherad's skill to check dot 7 to add 1. It doesn't show it, but when we see his field later, Pantherad's off his field. Kuon then attacks with Barbalator from the back row. Akina doesn't guard. Akina takes another damage. The damage Akina takes here is the Griffin that Kagetsu gave him. And when he sees it, he remembers some of Kagetsu's words. Again, that ties into what happens later, but because he hasn't found his motivation for fighting yet, the Griffin doesn't respond to him. So he takes the damage. Kuon then attacks with Huli. This one, Akina guards with 4 more cards out of hand. 3 cards and an intercept. But one of them was another crit. The turn ends. The damage is now 4-3 with Kuon back in the lead. And now we get some more, out of game talk. Akina basically talks to Kuon and reminds him of all the things he's done and how great he actually is. Akina thinks Kuon's incredible. The fact that he's researching how to travel to another planet/dimension with Cray. He says that, it's Vanguard that saved Suo, but the reason that Suo loves Vanguard and responded too much is actually because of Kuon. And that being here up against Kuon, it gives him that feeling that he doesn't want to lose either. And this starts to spark something inside of Kuon. So now we go into turn 7. Now, it's funny because this is where normally, turn 7, turn 8 is usually where the games end in this series. But this game was all the way to turn 9 and it gets good. All right, turn 7. Akina Persona rides Fated King of Miracles, Raziel Vita. Now, why is this a Persona ride? For anybody that doesn't remember, it's continuous Vanguard. This unit is also guarded as Fated One of Miracles, Raziel. During your turn, it gets 5k for each Fated One of Miracles in your soul, and it gains all of their divine skills. So because he wrote it over Fated One of Miracles, and it's treated as Fated One of Miracles, he gets Persona Ride. So now, from his hand, Akina calls a new copy of Nobia and uses its skill and calls a Gergeon off the top 3, and then he calls a Noberis from hand, the one that he added last turn. Akina attacks with Noberis. Kuon uses Levidra's skill. So he reduces the power of it by 10k, removes the marker, draws a card, and then he guards with a draw trigger from hand. Now here's another time where Akina uses Noberis' skill and it doesn't show it because it skips right to his next attack, but when we see his rearguard circle later, Noberis has gone off his rearguard circle. Akina attacks with Nobia and Kuon uses Levidra's skill again, reducing the power, drawing a card, and then guarding again. Akina attacks with Raziel Vita and uses its skill. Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, counterblast 1, choose up to 2 cards from your drop with different grades and total grade less than or equal to the number of cards in your damage zone, call them to rearguard. Then put a grade 3 or greater card with Raziel in its card name from your hand into the soul, choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop, call it to rearguard. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, all of the units called by this effect get 5k until end of turn. With this skill, Akina calls Noberis, Aerial Sage, and Nobia from the drop, giving them all 5k power. Then we see something you definitely don't see people doing in the competitive setting, but again, it's Akina using what he has because he's only using Raziel support instead of generic support. So Akina uses Nobia's skill, so it's a counterblast 1, check top 3. He's in his battle phase, so instead of calling the card, he gets to add it to hand. But off the top 3, homeboy gets a perfect guard, which is insane. So you know what? If you got the counterblast, it ain't that bad. It ain't that bad. Kuon guards the Vanguard attack with 3 triggers. Akina gets a critical on his twin drive, gives both effects to Noberis. Akina attacks with the powered up Noberis, and Kuon guards with the perfect guard. Akina uses Noberis' skill. This one it actually announces. He gets to draw a card, and then he gets to actually stack a card. He gets to look at the top card of his deck, and he stacks it on top of the deck. And this is probably why they showed it, because they wanted to show that he actually stacked it. Akina attacks with Nobia. Kuon doesn't guard. Kuon takes 1 damage. So the end of this turn, the damage is 4-4. So the game is even. Now we get the last like big out of game talk, where Kuon realizes that his feelings about Akina aren't anything negative. He just doesn't want to lose to Akina. He it's that competitive spirit that's driving him. Like from the get-go, he's wanted to be able to fight Akina and beat him, not because of any negative emotion, but because of just pure competitiveness. So they both declare that they want to win and neither wants to lose, and you can literally see it when the way they animated the weight just come off of Kuon's shoulders, and homeboy breaks into a smile, and we go into what ends up being his last turn 8. So Kuon persona rides Levi-Joss Imperio. Kuon calls another copy of Huli from hand. So I gotta mention this turn kind of went exactly how Kuon wanted it to, because Kuon went into this turn with 1 card in hand. He drew for turn. He persona rides, which draws you a card. He then calls Huli. Huli calls a copy of a Nanogaster from the drop. And then when he calls an Nanogaster skill, they again don't announce it, but he has to have used it because he only has 1 card in hand, and with what he does, he needs to have 2. So a Nanogaster skill is auto when this unit is placed on rear guard. If your Infinity Eyes marker is in the same column as this unit, Energy Blast 3, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest on the top or the bottom of the deck, and this unit gets 5,000 power until end of turn. Its second skill also matters, so I'll talk about that now too. Continuous rear guard during your turn. If you have a grade 3 Greater Vanguard with Levi-Joss in its card name, and you have 3 or more Infinity Eyes markers, this unit gets 5,000 power, and if you do not have another rear guard with the same card name as this unit in your back row, this unit can attack from the back row. So that's an extra attack for him. On top of the Foxhole, so he's going into a 5 attack turn. But now, because he used a Nanogaster skill, he gets an extra card. So then he calls Pantherad from hand, and then he uses Imperial skill, putting 1 more marker on his board, and then putting 2 markers on his opponent's front row. And in order to do that, he had to have a Levi-Joss in hand to put into the soul. So he had just enough cards with the skills he used to have what he needed to be able to make his board and set up his Infinity Eyes markers. But Kuon attacks with Levi-Joss Imperio. Akina guards with Perfect Guard. Kuon gets a heal trigger off his Twin Draw, which is huge right here. Gives the power to an Nanogaster, heals 1 damage. Kuon then attacks with Pantherad. Akina doesn't guard. Akina takes 1 damage and gets the card that he stacked, which was a draw trigger, which is again huge at this point in the game. He gives the 10k to his Vanguard, and then Kuon attacks with Barbalator. Akina guards with another critical. I hope you guys are keeping track. Kuon attacks with Huli. Akina guards with another critical trigger and intercepts with a 5k and uses a 5k from hand. And the last attack, Kuon attacks with another Nanogaster, and Akina is forced to guard with another Perfect Guard, leaving him with 1 card in hand. That turn was insane. Now, this last turn, Kuon had 2 skills that he used that they didn't really show him use. He used Pantherad again, because we do see the board one last time before we go into Akina's last turn, and his Pantherad is gone, so he obviously had to use Pantherad's skill, and he used Barbalator's skill. So Barbalator's skill is auto rear guard once per turn. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked if you have a grade 3 Greater Vanguard with Levi-Joss in its card name, counterblast 1, or remove an Infinity Eyes marker, draw a card, choose 1 of your rear guards, and it gets 5,000 power. So he would have gave the 5,000 power to something, but they don't announce any of it. So it is what it is. All right, guys, editing Zaffikel here. I realized that I missed 1 thing during my analysis. On Kuon's 3rd turn, turn 6 of the game, he had boosted Huli with Clarence, and he had used Clarence's skill to move it to Soul to countercharge 1, because the number of counterblasts he uses doesn't end up working out unless he uses that card to countercharge, and it opens up the spot that he ends up calling out a Gaster 2 on his following turn. My bad. Let's finish off the rest of the game. So now the damage is 5-3. Kuon is back in the lead, and Akina, I was kind of wrong when I said the last out of game talk, because Akina hits us with some crazy lines right before his final turn. Akina hits us with the Kagetsu. He says you can create a miracle just when you need one. And this is the thing that Akina wanted to try. Akina explains that you can put triggers back to deck, or you can pull everything but triggers from your deck. The whole game, our boy has been deck thinning and saving Raziel's Divine Skill, because normally, he goes turn 3, he uses Raziel's Divine Skill in almost every game. But this time he didn't use any of it. And we're going into his 5th turn, which is crazy for Akina. But again, this is an actual competitive move. So Akina doesn't persona ride. His main skips straight to his main phase, and Akina activates Raziel's divine skill. Act Vanguard Soul Blast 1. Return all critical triggers from your drop back to the deck and shuffle it. This unit gets drive +1 until end of turn. Until the end of this fight, you cannot ride units without Raziel in its card name, and you get when your damage check reveals a trigger other than a heal trigger. If your damage is at 5 or more cards, choose a card from your damage zone and heal it, and then you lose this ability. Akina sends back 7 critical triggers back to deck. This is the most he's sent in the entire series, point blank period. In the last 2 seasons and this one, this is the most critical triggers he's ever sent back at one time. And you start seeing around the crowd, all of the faded ones start cheering on Akina. So Akina moves to his battle phase and attacks at Raziel Vita and uses its skill. He calls Gigantic Masher, Silverus, and Blessed Dragon as well, Gabuelius from the drop. And then he activates Gabuelius' skill. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard, Soul Blast 1, look at the top card of your deck and put it to the top or bottom of your deck. You put it to the bottom of the deck, this unit gets 5,000 power. He puts it to the bottom of his deck. So he not only did he send all these triggers back, he's now starting to stack his deck as well. Akina also uses Silverus' skill. Remember, it's a Soul Blast 1, gives the front row 5k, so even more power. Akina also is boosting with Aerial Sage, and which he never does, he uses Aerial Sage's skill. So Aerial Sage has 2 skills. Continuous rearguard during the battle, this unit boosted. If you have a Grade 3 or Greater Vanguard Raziel in its card name, this unit gets 5,000 power. And then second skill is Auto Rearguard. When this unit boosts a Grade 3 or Greater Vanguard with Raziel in its card name, discard a card from hand, countercharge 1, and this unit gets 2,000 power until the end of that battle. So Akina has been counterblasting like crazy. Remember, every attack with Raziel is a counterblast. All the Nobias he used, he didn't really countercharge throughout the entire game. It never announces him using Aerial Sage's skill till now. But he's out of counterblast. He's got 5 face down damage. The reason he's using it here is because he's setting up for Gabuelius' skill. So what Gabuelius does is auto rearguard when this unit attacks. If your damage zone has 4 or more cards, until the end of that battle, this unit gets 5k power. If this unit was placed on rearguard by the ability of your Vanguard with Fade 1 in its card name this turn, which it was, and no drive checks were performed from a battle that your rearguard attacked, this turn, counterblast 1, this unit gets 10,000 power instead of 5,000. It gets drive -1, and it can perform a drive check or drive checks, depending on how you read it. So not only is he going to get his triple drive off of Raziel's skill, he's also going to get a drive check on the rear guard with Gabuelius, and he countercharged to make sure he could do that. Now we get to see, Kuon's intellect here as he does the math of Akina's deck. Akina has 24 cards left in deck. 12 of the cards are triggers, and he has all 8 criticals in his deck. Now, between the markers, the cards in hand, and the fact that he's at 3 damage, Kuon's like, I can survive 1 critical trigger, but I can't survive 2. So he's like, I'm gonna have to gamble. He doesn't guard the Vanguard attack, and it comes down to the triple drive. Akina gets a critical on his first check, he gets a grade 3 on his second check, and then he gets a critical on his third check. So he gives both of the critical effects to Raziel. It doesn't even show who he gives the power to, but Kuon takes 3 damage, and the game ends in such a ridiculously hype way. Now, fight's over, everybody's celebrating. Kuon says to himself, not only did he reach out to a miracle, but he created one himself. And this right here is huge character development for Akina. And Akina, even though Akina admits that he's only imitating Kagetsu, the whole belief behind Akina's character is, those who reach out for a miracle, those who reach out can be granted a miracle. From season 1, Akina has learned so fast and become so good. You see his first fight with Now, his fight with Taizo, his fight with everybody. He's constantly evolving his deck, constantly getting better at the game. His fight with Kagetsu impacted him so much that he rebuilt his entire deck to become a deck-thin deck. So when you set his triggers back, he has the highest chance of getting triggers and forcing his miracle instead of praying for his miracle. So that just shows how much better of a player Akina's already gotten, and it makes me even more excited for the rest of the season to see what the fuck is going to happen next. But the two shake hands, they agree to fight again. Kuon says next time he's going to win. The crowd is going nuts. The girls are blushing. They thought the fight was incredible. And then we see Now talking to Suo, and she says, as his mentor, I need to make sure I put on a good fight. And then she starts stretching. And then it jumps over to Erica, and she says, next, it's my turn. And at first I was like, no way, it's Now versus Erica. No way. But you know what? I normally don't do it, but I watched the previews for next episode, and it is in fact Now versus Erica. and we get this crazy shot of Nao's eyes with light and dark flames in it. And a lot of people were asking if she was still going to use Varga Dragus Rakshasa, and I think she is. And if you really think about it, this is Sybil versus Gabrielius 2.0. And we just got off one crazy ass hype episode, and we're gonna jump right into another crazy ass hype episode when the next one airs. I'm not sure if it's next week or if there's a break, but regardless, you know we'll be there to cover it. Guys, this episode was nuts. This episode left me on such a high. It was so good. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Like I said, this was one of the most competitive episodes I've seen since like season 1 of Vanguard. And as a competitive player who also plays Levidras, like, your boy was just locked into this episode. Let me know how you guys felt about this episode. Let me know how you guys feel about my episode reviews. I've been appreciating all the support. The channel's had so much growth in the last few months, and I love all y'all. Keep enjoying Vanguard. If you guys want to see me play Vanguard live, this week will be Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you guys will come by. If you guys want to check me out on social media, those things are also down below. That is it from me. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.